Hello, and welcome to another episode of Taylor Talks Comics. Today, we're going to go over the Taschen release of History of EC Comics. Stay tuned. Okay, so we just moved, new house, new studio, new setup, and I figured I've been saving this actually. I got this shipped to our old house right before we moved, but I've kept it in the package because I've been wanting to do this very special video. This is Taschen's release of the History of EC Comics. This is a massive book. It collects all the covers from EC's history as well as some historical coffee table-ish type info. It's a book I've been wanting for a really long time from Taschen, and they just had a sale where they're selling a lot of their display books for like heavy discounts. I think like 80%, no, not 80% off. 40, I don't know. It's a very significant discount. It's enough that I finally broke down and bought it. And it is a huge book. I even had to rig up a new camera setup just for this video, so hopefully everything shows up on the video all right. I do have a glare up here, but that's just like the plastic wrapping. I think once we get into the book, it won't be such a big deal. But this is exactly how Taschen shipped it. It comes in this like I think it's the collectible box. All their books do come in this protective box, which we'll unveil here in a second. But they just the only thing I changed was I ripped off my address off the shipping labels, but they slapped the labels right on the top of the plastic. I will say, a few years ago, I bought one of these huge Taschen books from Amazon, and Amazon I know is notorious for terrible packaging, and shipping books with no protection whatsoever. But Amazon did put this box, because all the Taschen books I've gotten have come in a protective box like this. The other ones I have are the Marvel ones. It came in a protective box like this, but then inside of another box from Amazon, and they actually put some protective wrapping in there. It's kind of surprising. It's probably the best packaging I've had from Amazon. So it's interesting to me that the Taschen just shipped it straight out in this box, as if this is the shipping box. But I don't really keep these boxes, so the fact that the box itself is kind of dinged up, not a big deal to me. I will show off the box though. It does kind of mirror what the book looks like on the underneath, just in a more two-toned look. It's not really black and white. It's got like a bluish tone to it. But it is really cool. They are really cool boxes. I just don't have the space to house these sorts of things. So that's why I just throw them away. I think one of the Marvel ones I let my son color on, actually. So I'm going to unbox this protectively. Hopefully with my handy-dandy knife here. I will say too that I love EC Comics, but I am nowhere near an expert on them. There are dozens of other people that are very much more versed in speaking about EC Comics than I. But I do have kind of an obsessive personality where when I find something I like, I do soak up everything about that topic like a sponge. So I've learned quite a few things about EC Comics over the years, but I just want to forewarn you that if you're coming here for like some sort of expert look on EC Comics, I'll do my best. But there's other places that I would recommend, like EC Fan Addict. He's Addict. Sorry, he's on YouTube, and he does a great job. He actually writes a lot of the forewords and intros to the Fantagraphics releases on EC Comics, which I have a video on those releases as well on my channel if you wanting to look at those books. I have actually a couple EC Comic books, a couple of videos about EC Comics on my channel. I have that one where it shows off all the Fantagraphics releases. There's actually another protective coating of plastic here. as well as the best way to get into EC Comics for new readers video. And then I have some other videos about people that worked on EC Comics, like I think I have a Harvey Kurtzman video and whatnot. So now we're going to open up the box and unveil this beautiful, beautiful book. Oh, wow. Okay. So, like I said, the box is cool. It has protective pieces in it to keep the book safe. And then here is the book itself, which has more plastic on it, which is great. Incredible cover here, too, from one of the sci-fi covers by Al Williamson and Frank Frazetta. So this was like I said, this was the display item sale that Taschen does once a year. And they don't do a lot of sales. So, and their books aren't really that heavily discounted in the direct market. Like you could buy like a Marvel Omnibus that's cover priced at like, it might be cover priced at like $125, but you can get it for like $60 if you shop at the right places online, like cheap graphic novels. Usually have them for 40% off. The Taschen books though are typically not that heavily discounted in the direct market. So anytime they have a sale is when I try to scoop them up because they're very, very expensive books. But like this one's cover priced at like $200, and I did not pay that. I did not want to pay that much for one book, and that's why this book's been out for a couple of years, and it took me so long to finally hunker down and buy it when it was heavily discounted. So you just have to kind of wait for the right deals. But this book is massive, and to show that off, I'm trying to see if I get the whole book in the camera here. I have a single issue comic book here. So this is a single issue of a comic book, and you can see how much bigger this book is to that. If you're familiar with the Marvel Omnibus format or DC Omnibus format, this is the Omnibus. This is like their oversized format of the comic book, and you can see Omnibus is bigger, and then this book is just, it's massive. I think it is the same exact trim size as the Marvel Taschen books. Let's see, actually, because I have the Spider-Man one here. Okay, it's a little bit different. It looks like the same exact height here, but the width here, the EC book's a little bit wider than you can't really tell on camera there. So pretty much the same size as the big Marvel Taschen books, which those don't have dust jackets, but this appears to have a dust jacket. So let's take that off and look underneath. Oh, all right. So here's the dust jacket, which is a really thick stock of paper. I don't think I've ever had a dust jacket this thick. It's kind of cool. There's the intro blurbs to the flaps there. And here's the back cover with some Wally Wood art. And then up there, Vault of Horror and Crime Suspense Stories. And then the book itself, did I show off the spine? I don't know if I did. With the dust jacket. There's the spine. You get Shock Suspense Stories cover, Weird Fantasy, and Tales from the Crypt cover. And then, of course, the famous EC logo. And then it says Taschen down below. Oh, jeez. Okay. That's one thing, though. Like I said, the paper stock's really thick. Taschen, their books are expensive, but they go all out. You get all the bells and whistles in these books. Here's a spine. You can see it's like kind of embossed EC Comics with the Taschen logo there, and Geisman is the gentleman that helped put this together. And then we have an embossed EC logo on the underneath the dust jacket. But their books are very high quality. The book designs are incredible. They go truly all out with these. So here's the inside flaps. You get some EC covers here. Try and get that glare off there because the pages, they do appear to be glossy, so the glare might be an issue here. Weird Science cover there by Wally Wood, adapting one of the Ray Bradbury stories, which is a famous piece of EC Comics history, is when Ray Bradbury sent them a letter saying, your comics seem to appear to mimic the stories that I've written quite a bit. How about we work together on adapting them, and you pay me for it? And which was a lot nicer than what he could have done. He could have just sued the pants off of them, and they would have had issues. Here's the table of contents here. We have an introduction, the MC Gaines era, which is Bill Gaines' father, and how EC Comics used to stand for educational comics. And then when Bill Gaines took over, he changed it to entertaining comics. And then the new trend of horror, the new direction after Frederick Wortham ruined comics, and then the complete covers in the back. So I'm not going to flip through every page here or spend too much time on any page, but I do want to show off the artwork. I'm trying to hold this a little bit steady to take away from that glare. We get some Golden Age comics art here. Funnies on parade, famous funnies. So yeah, Maxwell Charles Gaines, he's the father of Bill Gaines, and he's pretty much considered like the godfather of the single issue comic book. He's the one that came out with a single issue for the first time of anybody else, at least on record. He basically compiled a bunch of newspaper strips and pieced them together in a package that was like a single issue comic book and sold it. And then that took off, so then he started selling more that were just repackaged newspaper strips until he started having people draw their own comic strips. And then from there, we're getting Wonder Woman, Superman, like the superheroes took over. Stories from the Bible, these are the educational comics, and EC Comics really had a lot of biblical comics, which is almost funny that it then got to the point where a bunch of like the Frederick Wortham and a bunch of Bible thumpers ended up burning a lot of the horror comics and stuff from EC Comics to prove a point that they're ruining kids. But it's funny that the company kind of started with newspaper strips, but then it eventually became to the point where they were doing biblical stories. And again, like I said, I'm not an expert on EC Comics. I'm just spewing out what I know and what I've learned. If I get anything wrong, by all means, I'm a humble guy. You can put in the comments and let me know, and I can re-educate myself on any piece that I've gotten incorrect. I would like to make sure I get my facts straight, so don't hesitate there. So this is all from the Maxwell Gaines era, but the quality is amazing. Like it's scanned in, photographic, like they're high quality photos of the Taschen books, which I don't think I've shown off one on my channel, but the Spider-Man and Fantastic Four books that I have from Marvel, that's what those are. They're just like really high quality photographs of the original issues. And when I say high quality, I mean like they're the best photographs you can get, but it's really cool because they're reading it in a way that it's as if, like this, you can tell it's a photograph. You can see kind of a shadow around it. It's as if someone plopped this comic book on your desk for you to take a look at. So it's kind of like a nice historical document, but now it's oversized. Because again, if this is a comic book cover, you can see how much bigger it's and enlarged it is. So it's like they plopped it on your desk under a microscope. And then these are like original art pages, which is amazing that these still exist. Because this is see, it says an educational comic. Pre-EC Comics, what we think of EC Comics with their horror and their sci-fi and their war, even Mad Magazine. It's amazing that this original art still exists, because this has to be from the 40s, I think. Yeah, December 1947. So it's amazing that those still exist. So I didn't realize that this had so much MC Gaines era EC Comics in here, which is really amazing, because I haven't seen a lot of this stuff before. Trying to see. All right, so here's part 2. This is when Bill Gaines takes over. Yeah. So I love how they blew up this artwork too in here to really show it off in this great scale, because it's basically they took a comic book panel and like that small comic book panel just blew it up into much bigger. So even though this book is already oversized, seeing it blown up, like this is probably the biggest you'll see these comic book panels that are blown up like this, biggest you'll see them ever. And it's such a high quality photograph and scan that it's just amazing. You can see like the Ben-Day dots. So here's the changes, and here's so this is, like I said, this is the reason why I bought this was for the covers in the back, because the Fantagraphics books that I have, they don't collect a lot of the covers. I think only a few volumes even have covers in them, and that's one of the great things about EC Comics was the covers and how striking they were, and how they just like really popped on the racks whenever kids went to spinner racks back in the 50s to get comic books. These were the ones that are popping off drew attention to themselves, were the covers. And so even though I'm collecting, I didn't go the Dark Horse route of how they collect EC Comics, which do have all the covers in them. I went the Fantagraphics route, which is a more artist-centric volumes, but they don't have the covers. So that's the one thing I was kind of missing from my collection, was having all the great EC covers. So now I have them in this giant, oversized book. Oh wow, here's some layouts for a Going Steady Peggy comic. Just all these like historical documents is so incredible that they even exist. I'm glad that someone kept these for things like this, and that's what I love about these. I love comics, but I love comics history and learning about them. So I pick up all these different books that are like these coffee table books about comics history that are really good, and so and I think those are important because here's even like are those like the color separation guides? I don't even know what that's amazing. Yes, but like it's great to have this historical document with all these little things, like the artwork behind the scenes, the notes, the photographs. Like we need this to make sure that this history of this great medium go on for generations. Like I was born 3 decades after the heyday of EC Comics, so if this wasn't collected in any certain way or preserved for history or time, I would have never been introduced to these great comics. So it's just great that we have these. And that's why I like to support these comic history books and read them and soak them up, so that hopefully maybe I can pass on some of it to the next generation. This is really still before they get to like the war, the sci-fi, the crime, and the horror genres that they really dabbled in, which is again a time period of comics where superheroes were not. Oh, here's the new trend. So now we're getting into the good stuff. Here's a nice little ribbon to hold your place while you're reading, which is another great little touch of these. But here's the new trend. This is when they really started getting into those 4 genres, and then they would get into Mad Magazine, where they went to a comedy genre as well. But this was a day when it wasn't just superheroes dominating comics, which I think finally now in present day, we're getting to a point where it's not just superheroes dominating. We have things like Dogman that are in manga, which have all types of genres they dabble in. And then we have companies like Image and Dark Horse and stuff that are still pumping out kind of horror and crime comics. So we had kind of a resurgence of comics genre rather than just superheroes. Ghastly Graham Ingalls with this great zombie face here, zombie piece. This is Bill Gaines and L. Feldstein. Bill Gaines was like the publisher, and between the two of them, they wrote a good majority of a lot of the EC stories. Came at their pen, and then they handed them off to the bullpen of artists that they had, which was just an amazing array of artists. And Al Feldstein was also an artist in his own right. He did this cover. Hey, look, it's kind of cool they put this in here. That's a strip. They're like one-page strips that Harvey Kurtzman had put into, was it Timely back then? It's definitely Marvel. Yeah, Timely Comics. The Marvel offices, though. Stan Lee was actually a Kurtzman fan, and he would have these one-pagers that Kurtzman put in. I'd love to. I don't know if they've ever put a collection of Hey Looks together. I'd love to have that, because Kurtzman was just an amazing cartoonist. So So we're getting like blown up pages too of the comics, which is great. It's not just the covers. I don't know if they have any full stories in here though. That'd be cool. And then the covers, like, so I think from what I've seen from other ones that the covers aren't all collected in here in this big oversized format. It's not like they just have a big stock of covers. I think some of them are even thumbnails. But it's still pretty close to normal comic book sized, if that's the only way that some of the covers are in here. Yeah, but they had an amazing array of artists. Jack Kamen here, Wally Wood, like I've said before, Joe Orlando on this one, Johnny Craig, who's one of my all-time favorites of the EC bullpen. Probably my all-time favorite though is Jack Davis. He was so versatile in what Jack Davis can put together. A lot of his most famous works are like commercial art that he did for. Here's the 3 horror hosts in different incarnations from different. So this one's Johnny Craig. That's Feldstein. And I think that is Cool Lunatics. Who did was this? Yeah, Jack Davis. Old Witch by Johnny Craig, Feldstein. Okay, so those are just the different artists, different incarnations of the 3 witches, which were the horror hosts of the Vault of Horror, the Crypt Keeper, so Tales from the Crypt. Oh, here's some, what's this from? Is this like photographs? Interesting. Oh, you can see them putting the makeup on, even. And I like that they have the giant covers here, and then they also have like the original art covers, which I do have the Artisan edition, like the paperback, but it's still oversized edition of EC artwork from IDW, because they do all the artist edition books, and they've been coming out with Artisan editions. Here's another great piece. I just love these blown up panels. You'll never see the artwork done that way again. Here's a full strip. It looks like Child of Tomorrow, a very famous sci-fi strip. But I have the Artisan edition, which I should show off because it has a lot of the most famous EC stories in their original art form. Yeah, that's one thing too, though. Sci-fi. It was always said that the sci-fi stories, like weird science, weird fantasy, were some of the lesser selling titles in the EC lineup. There's the horror titles, the war comics, and the crime comics that were the best sellers. But the sci-fi ones were Bill Gaines' favorite. So he was always trying to push those. So even in the old issues, if you get like an issue of Two-Fisted Tales, which is the war comic, even if you pick up one of those, like they'd have a lot of ads for the sci-fi comics. He's really was trying to push those. Oh, here's a war story. It's even titled that. But John Severin was another, and Will Elder were 2 other artists I haven't named yet. But John Severin was an amazing artist for war comics, but also Western comics. And when he took over the lineup of Frontline Combat and Two-Fisted Tales from Harvey Kurtzman after Kurtzman left, Severin really started to kind of this is amazing. Air things more or kind of add Westerns, the Western era of war to the titles. This is amazing, though. This is Harvey Kurtzman's layouts. Let me see here. Okay, so this is Jack Davis art. Okay, so this is Harvey Kurtzman's layouts, and then you get the exact comparison with Jack Davis's final art. This is incredible. I've never seen it presented this way before, like side by side. So Harvey Kurtzman did the war comics. He was the one that kind of introduced those 2 EC comics, and he was always famous for when he would write the stories, he would do these very like detailed layouts. Like these are, I mean, I would read a whole book of Kurtzman's layouts if someone like scanned in the dialogue on top of it. That would be an interesting way to consume Kurtzman's war comics, I think. I would definitely buy that. I don't know how many of these exist, how many of the Kurtzman layouts exist, but I've seen them before, and they're very, very detailed. So what's great about that is that when he does it so detailed, it allows the artist to really focus in on the actual art itself rather than have to, in their head, lay out the pages of how the figure's going to be. And Jack Davis, one of the things that made me fall in love with his artwork was his work with Kurtzman on the war comics. I think it's called Death Stand, is the Fantagraphics book where it's all Jack Davis artwork and war comics with all Kurtzman layouts. I think they were such a good tandem. But this is just an amazing piece to be able to compare side by side exactly what Kurtzman wrote down for the layouts and then what Jack Davis finished on top. This alone, I think, is like almost worth the price of admission for this book. Yeah. But Kurtzman's war comics, I think, are the best war comics ever. Because they were so like harrowing. Like, he did not shy away from, this is a Kurtzman cover for sure, you can tell by the figure. I don't even know if it's signatures on it. It's probably hidden there somewhere. But he did not shy away from the horrors and the awful side of war. Like, he truly presented war. The Corpse of the that's definitely Kurtzman art too. That's a very famous Kurtzman story. Like, a lot of the war comics back then, from like Timely and DC and whatnot, presented war like in a very patriotic, like kind of go America, we're the good guys, everyone else is bad guys kind of way. But not Kurtzman. Like, Kurtzman really presented the war comics, like I said, there were no winners in war. Like, it was just the true horrors of war and like what the ugly side of it and what these men and women go through when they go into combat. Like, their kind of their everyday life and what they're dealing with in the line of fire. Just really incredible and like breathtaking, heartbreaking kind of way. So if you like war comics, I would definitely try out Kurtzman's EC Comics. Like, and that's a great thing too. If you're watching this video and you've never tried EC Comics, I think of that era. I think it's Joe Kubert, isn't it? Oh no, it's Jack Davis. I think I've seen Joe Kubert maybe do an homage to this then. That's Jack Davis artwork. Great cover. But of this era, so these were like 1950s is when these comics were coming out. But I promise you, if you've never read these, if these stories still hold up today, between the amazing artwork and the storytelling, you're still going to get so much out of these comics if you read them today. Especially if you're a fan of like Ed Brubaker's crime comics. I think you will love Johnny Craig's crime comics. I think they kind of fit. They're kind of cousins to each other. Same thing with like Kurtzman's war comics. If you're into like Garth Ennis's war comics, I think Kurtzman's war comics are a great introduction to that. Hate. This reminds me of Peter Bagg. If you're into Rick Remender's sci-fi stuff, like Fear Agent, like that is like, Rick Remender's an unabashed fan of EC Comics, especially the sci-fi genre of EC Comics. So if you're into Rick Remender's sci-fi stuff, I would try out the EC sci-fi stories. And then horror, if you're into any sort of horror comics, you're going to love EC's horror comics. Yeah, so we get a lot of covers and original art in here, a lot of strips. I know the next chapter was called Covers. Oh no, here's Mad Magazine. Oh, there's the first cover to Mad Magazine, which I wish they would recollect. I think DC Comics has the rights to Mad Magazine, and they put out archives, and I only have volume 1. I need the other 3 volumes. If anyone has a tip on those, let me know in the comments. So I'd really like to have those. The early Mad magazines, when it was in comic book form, are just incredible. My cat's coming into the picture there. Everyone say hello. Oh, wow. So I just read the Dirty Pictures book about the underground comics scene, and the amount of cartoonists that cite this exact cover by Basil Wolverton as being their inspiration to get into comic books was incredible. Like, everyone from R. Crumb to like Jay Lynch and sorry, my cat was screaming there. Jay Lynch and trying to think of other ones. Spain Rodriguez, like all those underground cartoonists from that era. Even like Gilbert Shelton. They all cited this cover as being like, and it was at different times. Like, these people didn't know each other as kids, but as kids, they picked up this cover and it was so astonishing to them. And it was trying to mimic the Life magazine cover of The Most Beautiful People. And this was like the most beautiful girl of the month. by Mad Magazine. Basil Wolverton's just amazing. And that's the original art with the paste ups and everything. I'd never seen it presented that size before. That's really incredible. Just the fact that that cover has so much history and influence just from that one cover. Incredible stuff. And there's more Basil Wolverton. Panic was another one they did. So Mad Magazine was presented as a comic book. And then after, oh man, there's more Basil Wolverton. I love Basil Wolverton so much. His artwork is amazing. I'm getting distracted here. Before the Comics Code Authority came in and Frederick Worth and Ruin Comics, Mad Magazine was a comic book form, and then they presented it as a magazine on the magazine rack to avoid the Comics Code Authority. Batboy and Reuben. That's what Mad Magazine was too. Originally, it was a spoof on the comic book genre. In the early issues, like the first couple issues in particular, Mad Magazine spoofed themselves. Like there was like a spoof on their crime comics, spoof on their sci-fi comics, spoof on their horror comics, and the war comics. Were the 4 strips in that first Mad Magazine issue. Starchy, like Archie. But then they would eventually start spoofing all the genres, even superheroes and stuff. The Super Duper Man, which I don't think that was in the first issue, Super Duper Man. I think that was in maybe the second or third issue. You can let me know in the comments if I had that wrong. But I just love that they started off making fun of themselves before they started making fun of the rest of the industry. Because it's kind of like that 8 Mile thing from Eminem at the end of 8 Mile when he is in the rap battle and he makes fun of himself before the other guy can, so then the other guy has nothing to say about him. So it's like before EC Comics went at the rest of the comic book industry and made fun of them. The Million Year Picnic, I think that's the name of a comic book shop in the Boston area. But before they started making fun of the rest of the industry, they made fun of themselves. So it's like the rest of the industry couldn't really say anything back because they already said it. And this might be, I don't know, you'll get many EC Comics videos on YouTube where they compare them to 8 Mile. But there you go. That's what I bring to the table. Thank you for watching. Give the video a thumbs up too if you like this, by the way. And comment down below with your thoughts on EC Comics. I'm not ending the video. I'm just trying to do my little plugs here. And then share the video with your friends and family that also like comics, maybe. I'm trying to up my subscriber count. So I'd really appreciate any sort of support. Oh, these are all the self-portraits. Man, this book is amazing. It really has so many cool things in here. So not only did the EC Comics have artists in the bullpen have like really distinct signatures, which I love, but they also have these like self-portraits. So Wally Woods is really famous. I recognize that one right out of the blue. And then also Wally Wood did the back of his head. It's kind of a recluse. Harvey Kurtzman's done a few. I've never seen that one before. Bernie Creakston. It's funny too seeing which ones are self-deprecating and then which ones are really trying to pump themselves up as having like a very handsome face. Johnny Craig's just, that's so perfect for him. Just that nice clean line. I will say too, I apologize for the crickets in the background. Like I said, this is a new house. I'm trying to get rid of those, but so far there'll be the audience in the background, I guess. Oh, this is a very famous. This is the whole bullpen done. Was this the Marie Severin one? No, John Severin did this one. Okay, I think Marie Severin did one too. But this whole bullpen with John Severin's interpretation, kind of a caricature of the whole bullpen. Which, by the way, it's another thing too. Like Stan Lee put together the EC Fan Addict Club. EC Fan Addict, if you're watching this, you should maybe redo this if you haven't already, and maybe people can order those and get them framed and stuff. I'd buy one. Anyways, Stan Lee though, when he started, well, not when he started, but during the heyday of EC Comics, my cat's meowing in the background. Sorry, in the heyday of Marvel Comics. I digress. Stan Lee, in the heyday of Marvel Comics, when like Fantastic Four 1 came out and then Amazing Fantasy 15 and all this stuff kicked off, he really put together this kind of facade that Marvel had, this like really gentleman's club of a bullpen that was wild and crazy and had all these antics, and they're all laughing together and having, you know, camaraderie in the offices of Marvel, when in truth the Marvel bullpen really didn't exist in that format. Everyone kind of worked on their own at their own house and stuff. But it was kind of modeled after the EC bullpen, because the EC bullpen was very much more like that in truth. Here's some censored artwork. So you can see, and it's got the original art in here with the axe in the head, and you can see the final cover here with just a glare where they had to literally white out the axe and draw all over the top of it. And then it looks like in this story, we have another axe in the head, which changed in that artwork. So this is just such a historical document of one of the greatest runs in comics. I mean, there's Frederick Wertham with The Seduction of the Innocent. They only had like an 8-year run, truly, in their at the peak of their powers with those 4 genres I keep talking about. But the amount of comics they put out in that 8 years is just astonishing. So Frederick Wertham, I've talked about him on my channel enough. I've said that he ruined comics a few times in this very same video. So this is a great piece. Even some propaganda ads about what parents don't know about comics. And the blueprints for delinquency. All these articles written. Here's the... Yes, this is Bill Gaines testifying in... I'm trying to figure out the name of the thing. At the subcommittee to investigate juvenile delinquency. Yeah, but this is very famous too. If you have not seen or heard about this story, Bill Gaines. So Frederick Wertham wrote this book called Seduction of the Innocent about how comics are ruining kids, basically, causing them to be violent or even turning them into homosexuals. Just really stupid stuff that Wertham was writing about. And obviously, it very much is similar to today when you see and hear about like video games causing kids to be violent and whatnot. And really, there's some parenting, parents not holding themselves accountable for what they're letting their kids consume. But there was no truth in that these comics were causing kids to be violent. Frederick Wertham was counseling some kids from the inner city who already had rough backgrounds, and he like canceled like 5 of them, not even a good portion, and they all said that they read comics, and they all said they had violent streaks in them, like they either got in fights or they're I don't know if they even came across guns or what have you. And so it was just like that. It was just the fact that these kids read comics and these kids also have violent streaks was enough for him to write this book about how comics are turning kids into violent things, which one of my college professors always said this when he talked about how these like are more coincidental than they are evidential. But things like, you'd say, well, in the summertime, crime goes up, and in the summertime, ice cream sales go up. So if we're trying to use the same sort of logic that Frederick Wertham's using here, then you could come to the conclusion that ice cream causes murder, would be a premise that my college professor would use, and I'm just using it as an analogy for how illogical Frederick Wertham was in this. But this was one of the famous covers that they talk about in the court, or in the hearing when Bill Gaines is on the stand, and one of the senators is asking him, or person of the Senate committee is asking him, like, do you think this is a tasteful cover for a child to pick up and read? Is it not too violent? And then Bill Gaines, who had a really poor performance on the stand, he didn't take it seriously in the fact that he couldn't believe that these people were actually asking these questions. So he'd come up with these kind of snide remarks, or kind of these sarcastic kind of ways of explaining the situation. And this one, he said, like, well, if I wanted to make it more violent, I would have put her head, I would have shown the severed head more at the bottom, or what. The way he explained it was like this wasn't as violent as he could have pushed it. Not that he drew this, but as a publisher. So this is a really famous cover to do with that Senate hearing. You could tell they really did their homework in putting this book together. So that's all. I want to get to the covers part because there's still so much more. I'll just flip through it. Some more Mad Magazine stuff. Oh, even the influence of underground comics. It's all Skull in there. So, interesting. There's still so much to look at in this book. I don't want to keep flipping through every single page. But I do want to get to the cover gallery because this was truly the reason why I bought this book was for this reason. The fact that, I mean, just to show you, I bought this book for this content right here. And then I'm getting all this on top of it. So I justify that as an amazing value. Yeah, so every cover is collected in here that EC ever put together, which I didn't know. I didn't know the educational comic covers were going to be in here, which is amazing. I'm glad they are because their artwork in itself is cool. Even like EC Comics always had great lettering too. I'm not talking about the lettering for the dialogue and stuff because that was all what they call that. Shoot, I know they had a different. It's a very specific like. It wasn't digital, but it was a computerized version of how they did the lettering. I'm talking about like the title lettering was always great, and that's still even apparent in the educational era. So we got all the all the educational comic era. Then we have Saddle Justice, Gunfighter, the Westerns, Saddle Romances, Modern Love, Moon Girl, and then Crime Patrol, War Against Crime. And then we get the new trend covers. The new trend is what they refer to as the era where EC is known as. I mean, that's what they're known most famously for. So yeah, I did think when I first heard this book was coming out that I assumed that each cover was going to get a full page. It is kind of sad that they have this small thumbnails for some of the covers, but they do blow up some of them. It would be interesting to see how they were trying to pick and choose which covers to blow up and which covers to thumbnail. I'm assuming it was just based on how good the artwork was. Here's a great Jack Davis cover that has some Jack Kirby influence to it, I feel like. Or not Jack Kirby influence, but maybe Jack Kirby was influenced by this cover. But Jack Kirby always had people running and screaming at the camera, if you like of the page. So the fact that they're kids too is just great. Jack Davis is just so versatile. Like even in this one image, you can see like the cartooniness of the child, which is great because it shows you that the child is more is younger, and then the cartoony look kind of shows that. But then you have like this very realistic, scary monster in the background. He just had such a range. We get some more of the horror comics. Weird Science, now we're getting the sci-fi stuff. A lot of great Wally Wood covers here. Al Feldstein on that one. There's a Wally Wood cover. Looks very much like Mars Attacks, which Wally Wood did have a hand in those cards later in his career. Weird Fantasies, Al Williamson cover. Al Williamson drawing dinosaurs. I will always mark out for that. But Al Williamson's such a great artist in his own right. Here's some Kurtzman war comic covers. There's a Jack Davis one earlier that I thought was... I don't know why. I think Joe Kubert must have done an homage cover to that I've seen. But I don't think Joe Kubert ever did anything for EC, so I'm not sure why I thought that. But Johnny Craig, his crime comics, I swear, are the best crime comics I've ever read. It's a question I often get asked is like, where do you start with EC? And I always recommend Bill Elder, who there's Kurtzman's signature. He was at Harvard H. Kurtz, and then a stick figure for Man. I always recommend sci-fi. You go Wally Wood. War comics, you go anything written by Kurtzman. Jack Davis maybe for the art. Horror comics, I always say Ghastly Graham Ingalls. And then crime comics, Johnny Craig would be where I would start. If you want to get into it. But that's the great thing too is like they're all one and done stories. Each issue had like 3 8-page strips in them, done by a different creative team, and all the stories were one and done. They didn't really continue on from issue to issue. So you can pick up any issue of EC Comics that you ever see, any book of EC Comics, and dive right in. It doesn't have to be a volume 1 or issue 1 or anything like that. And there's Bill Gaines with the 3 horror hosts. And then here's the back cover. Inside flaps. So a really beautifully designed book. I went long, but I mean, I think this book deserves it. It's now officially one of my pride and joys of my collection for sure, is this book. But thank you for watching. Again, give this video a thumbs up, share it with all your friends. If you want to hear more about EC Comics, let me know in the comments. Or if you have your own thoughts about EC Comics, let me know that in the comments too. I always reply to every comment. I love talking comics. And stay tuned for more videos. So thank you for watching.